just in case any of you ladies find yourselves going through a divorce, I'm going to share with you one of my biggest tips that I tell all of my Man Proof Your Life clients. And this, in my opinion, is the secret to future happiness and success. I am going to warn you right off the bat, your divorce attorney is going to tell you that I'm crazy. And it's not because I'm actually crazy or because I'm wrong. It's because they're going to make less money off of you. By the way, I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two, where I share my marriage collapsing and how I've rebuilt a happy, successful, somewhat functional life on the other side. Stay tuned. Maybe 2025 is going to be my year where I can just be like, I rebuilt a totally happy life on the other side. I'll keep you posted. If you've been on my channel at all here, you know that I do a lot of videos sharing how my Mormon returned missionary husband of 24 years destroyed my life by financially abandoning me and my kids after 24 years of marriage. And I share all kinds of details about how he only paid 1 month of the 5 years of alimony after our divorce, how I didn't receive a settlement, how he hid money and did all kinds of different things to avoid having to pay me anything. If you are new here, within a couple of days of my marriage ending, I was unable to buy $43 worth of groceries at Trader Joe's. And that's it. We should have had a fortune in our bank account. I swiped my little card. It shot at me that little card declined thing. I drove to the bank. Everything had been cleaned out. That money was never recovered. Within a year of my divorce, I would be living in my Mercedes SUV, unable to put gas in it, doing a little GoFundMe that I would text and Facebook Messenger to friends for gas and food money until I eventually had to give that vehicle back to my husband because it didn't belong to me. Whenever I do these videos sharing the details of how my ex-husband got out of supporting his family post-divorce, I get tons of, I know, really well-meaning and caring, compassionate comments and DMs from you out there telling me all kinds of different ways that I need to take him back to court. Really obvious things like, you can file contempt of court and try to collect the arrears, or he should be thrown in jail. You can put a lien on his property. Eventually, you'll get 50% of his Social Security. From time to time, I've even had family law attorneys very generously reach out to me on my various platforms and offer to do some pro bono work to just help me recuperate funds from my ex-husband so me and my kids can survive. So I want to share just a couple of details of what I actually did post-divorce to try to get financial support from my ex-husband. And then this big aha moment that I had with the family law attorney that is this magic secret tip that I'm going to share with you. That is why the Life Take Two has a take two, because everything got better once I leaned into this. So after our divorce, my ex-husband paid 1 month of alimony and child support. He was supposed to pay for 5 years, alimony and child support. Not a lot of money, just enough to kind of help me with the rent and a little bit of food and gas money. I still had to go get a job and do something to begin to provide for myself. So I paid that first month. The second month, he paid just a few $100s of the $1,600 in spousal maintenance that he was court ordered to provide. And he realized the court wasn't going to do anything about it. That was the month, by the way, that I would become homeless because I was alimony and child support dependent to pay my rent. So the next month, I found myself sleeping in my car in my young children couch, surfing with friends and family members. And I didn't even have the money to hire an attorney or anything. And by the way, there was no settlement. He had hidden all of the money. When my marriage ended, I had nothing. I did receive a $6,000 lump sum that was less than my attorney's fees. So technically, I had less than nothing. And I hadn't worked for 24 years. That's kind of the deal with being a Mormon trad wife. So I went into the court without an attorney and said that I needed to file a motion of contempt of court and try to get him to pay that alimony. And I couldn't even afford the $189 to file that contempt of court. And I asked for a fee deference and they refused to give me one. So I wasn't able to file. Eventually, within a couple of months, I had some friends help me with the money to file. I filed, we had a hearing, and I sat in this little office of some type of a counselor at the court. And this woman said, I just simply don't understand why a grown adult female like yourself is financially dependent on her ex husband. Why don't you go get a job? And she didn't do anything to enforce. And I would find that over the next couple years, the court did nothing. There were a couple of times where my ex-husband had warrants out for his arrest. I remember one hearing we got to court and they said, if you don't come up with the $16,000 in arrears that you owe at this point, you're going to go to jail. You could potentially be incarcerated at court. So I went to court that day, like just literally like biting my fingernails and thinking, he's possibly going to be like handcuffed in court and dragged off if he doesn't pay. But here's what happened instead. The commissioner that day felt really sorry for him because a pandemic had started and he wasn't really working at all. And so the commissioner said, sir, if you will just make a purge payment of $200 today, then we will get rid of the potential incarceration. And, hopefully you can catch up in this future. And my ex-husband promised that he was going to do a good job to catch up on the arrears. I did bring up in court, my children and I are homeless. We're unable to provide for ourselves. He is court ordered to provide this money so that we aren't homeless, and nobody cared. Sometime during that same year, when the arrears started to stack up a little bit more, and I think he maybe had another warrant out for his arrest, but I could be mistaken about that. We went back to court again, and this time the commissioner was a little bit less patient with him. And he dropped a bombshell in court by saying, my aging mother, who has Alzheimer's and dementia, has fallen out of her bed a couple times in her nursing home in Texas. So I had to drive out to Texas and pick her up. And I'm now the full-time caretaker of my 80-something-year-old mother. So I can't work. My ex-husband, by the way, has not had a job that I know of in most of the 6 years since our divorce. His full-time job has been being really creative with getting out of paying alimony and child support. And over the 6 years since our divorce, he has just whittled away until he only owes me 400 something dollars a month. That 400 something dollars a month combined with my very first job that I ever got as an adult after being a Mormon tradwife for 24 years, working for $11 an hour in an elementary school, 4.5 hours a day, wasn't really enough to do anything. And I've had full custody of the kids. So one day about 3 years ago, I really, really hit rock bottom. I got COVID so bad during the pandemic, ended up with a 10-inch deep vein thrombosis in my left thigh, hundreds of blood clots that had embolized to my chest and neck area, another couple hundred blood clots in my left leg. And it didn't look like I was going to make it, but then I did. I got out of the hospital in a wheelchair. Eventually would regain most of the use of my leg. I do still have some paralysis in that left leg to this day, which makes me kind of fun on hikes. I trip easily. And as I was going through all of this, and my ex-husband was taking me back to court yet again to lower that alimony and child support, I reached out to a family law attorney who was one of my TikTok followers who had offered me some free help. And I asked her to kind of look over my case and see if there were some angles that we had missed. And she did. And she actually came up with some really good ideas. She said, I think that we can enforce this. And this is something that nobody's ever done before. And for just a little moment, I had some hope. But she ended the conversation with this. She said, as a family law attorney, I think it's time for you to stop investing any time or energy into squeezing money out of a man who hates you. And she shared with me some clients that she had had over the years and then some statistics like less than 40% of child support is ever collected. Less than 17% of alimony is ever collected. And she said, Jenny, as an attorney, if you were my client, I would tell you, let's fight this. But if you were my sister, I would tell you, put your energy into building your own future. You're never going to get a dime out of this guy. A couple days later, I was running errands and I had like an extra half hour that I was just kind of sitting in my car waiting for my son to get out of school so I could drive him to his after school basketball game. And I decided to pay a couple bills. I thought I had a couple $100 in my bank account, but when I clicked in to check my balance, I only had $60 with $200 worth of bills to pay. And I sat in my car feeling all of the feelings of hopelessness and anger and just really crying my eyes out and being overwhelmed by all of the challenges that I was facing as a single mom post divorce. Her words were still kind of echoing in my ears. And I remember just thinking to myself, is there something that I can do today to make a little bit of money to pay these bills? I just happened to be sitting in front of Deseret Industries, the Mormon thrift store, and there's just something so ironic and serendipitous about that. And I thought, you know what? Me and my ex husband used to build custom homes, and I helped refinish and do cabinetry. And I've, staged homes and painted furniture. I bet that I can take this $60, walk into this thrift store, and buy something to make just a little bit of a profit by the end of the day. So I went into DI, plunked down every penny that I had in my bank account on two white twin beds and another upholstered bright red bed, came home, cleaned up the upholstered bed, painted those two twin beds, took cute little pictures, put them on my Facebook, and by the next day, I had made back the whole $60, an extra 200. I paid all of my bills and I had a little bit of money to go back to the thrift store the next. And you guys, it's funny, but even like this apartment that I'm living in, the sheets on the bed, the clothes that I'm wearing, the food in our fridge is all because I started that little furniture flipping business after my divorce. You see, women like myself who've been stay at home moms for a long time, who never had an education or a career, we don't have any certification or job skills, we're faced with either entering the workforce at the very bottom rung and working for minimum wage and being away from our kids for long periods of time, or trying to figure out some type of a boss babe hustle. And I found for me that as I looked at jobs around town, like my $11 an hour school teaching job, there wasn't a way for me to even begin to make the money that I needed to support my kids. And as I crunched the numbers on a little furniture flipping business and figured out how many pieces I would need to do per week, how many supplies I would need to buy, I didn't need a shop. I had a big backyard with a covered awning that I could easily just plug in a sander and do my work outdoors. It's Arizona, so the weather's always nice. It did get really hot. I did have two heat strokes, but I didn't need to buy a shop. And as I crunched those numbers, I saw that I could make about 4 times as much money in a part-time work week as I would working full-time at an entry-level position. I did have a lot of medical issues at that time, including my anoxic brain injury from surviving my unaliving attempt, which made it really difficult for me to work anywhere because I was still prone to seizures and chemical exposures could cause those seizures. So it was a way for me to control my environment. I used organic paints and a lot of historic, like milk paint and different things like that. It was well ventilated and I was carefully masked. And it allowed me to not have to like call in sick to work because I wasn't able to make it. I set my own schedule and that made it really handy to be a mom. You guys, it was hard work. If you've never refinished giant dining tables that seat 10 people or strapped a dresser to your SUV so that you can get it home and try to finagle a way to get it down yourself because I was home alone while everybody else was off at school and work, then you cannot possibly comprehend the sore muscles and achy back and the carpal tunnel that I was getting in my wrists. But after spending 24 years being completely financially reliant on Jake, it was so worth the money in my bank that was just from my own two hands. The whole rest of the world was kind of in the middle of a pandemic, and even some of my well off friends were struggling financially because they couldn't go to work. I was making furniture for people in my backyard. And it was amazing too, because I had this creative outlet to, like take this old chunky dresser or desk or whatever and turn it into something beautiful and get paid for it. I did have to close down my shop this May when The family member that we were renting a home from gave us a 30-day notice to be out, and I lost my shop, and I'm now living in a tiny little apartment where I don't have that shop space. And it's not safe for me to be indoors, so I can't rent a storage unit or a shop or anything like that. So my furniture business ended in May. I did my very last dresser, which was literally my own personal dresser, which was kind of a junky thing that I think I bought at a garage sale during my divorce for Chloe, but I love the way it turned out. I think it's so cute. So now all of my paintbrushes and sanders and everything are packed away in a Rubbermaid in my storage unit somewhere. And it's funny how much I missed the career that I never planned to have the first couple months after we moved in here. And we certainly missed the revenue that it generated too when that came to an abrupt stop. But thankfully, I've been able to rebuild my other businesses, and hopefully, this year is a little bit more financially sound. I never spent another penny taking my ex husband back to court. I focused all of my energy, all of my time, any little bit of extra money, even if it was $20, on just buying more product and building my own income for myself over here. And that is the best advice that I could possibly give you. You can spend years in court, and the only people who are making money are the attorneys and the judge and the paralegals. It is not, in my opinion, worthwhile to keep taking things back to court. Certainly, I think maybe you need a good mediator or a good attorney in the beginning, although even for me, we didn't need attorneys. Arizona's a 50-50 state. Everything was what it was. And I didn't have the money to do a really thorough job of investigating and hiring forensics accountants. So even for me, it would have been better if I just showed up by myself in court that first time. I would have saved a lot of money. Do what you need to do in your divorce, and then put your energy and your resources into building your own life. And even better advice is a man is not a plan in the beginning. Let's prevent this so it doesn't happen. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments.